You're listening to the Bears Barroom Radio Network, and the following program is suitable for all audiences.
Oh, still 2 minutes!
Let's let this hard work pay off. Let's cut it loose, ball out, let's put a lot of freaking points up on the board. Let's go. Every day we improve, right? Yep. Reset, job not done. Yes, sir. Play by play, next play mentality. Love you, bro.
I want you to take a second to think about everything, every one of you gave up to be in this position right here. I don't care what you did, you had to give something else to have this opportunity. So take advantage of it tonight. Play ball like you love it. Here we go.
Come on, boy, let's eat up, man. Get it.
Like we talked about earlier this week, it's the opportunity for us to stack this game. Let's go ahead and execute. Let's be the playmakers out there. Let's go. Playmakers on 3. 1, 2, 3. Playmakers. Yeah.
I'm going to challenge you right now for greatness. Yes, sir. You got me? Yes, sir. You take this thing over right now. Yes, sir. All right, here we go.
Trubisky throwing left side of the end zone. Catch is made. Touchdown Bears.
Attaboy! Attaboy! Great job.
Snap. Trubisky throws the slant right. Robinson's in the end zone. Touchdown! A well-executed drive puts the Bears in front.
Come on, boys. Kick out. Demo, hell of a run, bro.
Bearlissimo.
Welcome to Bearlissimo, the George Bayliss Show, and this very special edition we are releasing on Monday, April 13th. My name is Aldo Gandia. I am George's producer and co-host. Just a reminder, Bearlissimo's regular show on Tuesdays is still on board, 2 p.m. Central, and we've got a very special guest that I will talk to you about at the other end. But first of all, this show is all about Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Senior Bowl. George landed an interview with him, and he's going to talk to him for the next 30 minutes about the Senior Bowl and about some of the prospects who are entering the NFL draft. The Senior Bowl and Bears Barroom have started to develop a very special relationship, and we're very proud of that. And of course, we're very lucky that Jim could carve out so much time to talk to us during what is, of course, a very busy time in his schedule. Then, after the interview with George and Jim, make sure you stick around. I've got some more stuff for you, so do not go away.
Joining us today on Bearlissimo, I've got the great pleasure of introducing former Bears Barroom Badge of Honor winner and recipient of a ball from the Ball Girl, a former scout of the NFL for the Browns and Seahawks of 18 years experience, and now 2 years as director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy. Thanks for joining us today, Jim. How are you? And I hope you're well.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on. Yeah, it was great getting the ball at the Senior Bowl that you presented our staff with. That was great. Really appreciate that. And everything's good here in Mobile. It's probably very similar to where all your listeners are. Everyone's self-quarantining and doing what they can do to contain this thing and just trying to be as safe as we can be. So hopefully you're okay on your end.
Yeah, I'm very well. I've actually had the virus here, but we've had it in the mild version, so we've been very lucky and blessed that we've got over that as a family. So it is an interesting time and an interesting segue you've put there for us today, Jim, is with this COVID-19 epidemic and the fact that these things can interrupt the process at any time. We have no control over these things. And so where people have got the opportunity to control things which are within their control, like, for example, accepting an invite to a Senior Bowl or one of the other sort of post-season all-star type invitee games where you're going to be able to be in front of NFL scouts. It seems now, obviously hindsight being 2020, it seems provident that when people get the chance to put their abilities and talents and to answer questions, when you've got an opportunity to do that, is to embrace that. And I think this COVID-19 epidemic has maybe shown us some of that. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree with that. People got after me on Twitter recently. I posted something along those lines, and it really had nothing to do with the epidemic, because obviously, hopefully, we won't go through anything like this for the foreseeable future. But exactly what you said, take advantage of every opportunity you have to compete, because I tell the players the last 2 years since I've been at the Senior Bowl, at the orientation the first night, I said, guys, you've already won just by being down here. You've already made a statement to these NFL teams, kind of what you're made of, and you're a competitor. And again, things happen over the course of the process. I mean, I guess my original post on Twitter was more to the guys that decline a Senior Bowl invite, choose not to work out at the combine, and then blow a hamstring or something leading up to their pro day. I've seen that happen way too many times over the years. And then guys get, they go through the whole draft process without ever taking advantage of their opportunities. So it was more about that. It was more about guys just, getting hurt, during the process and not being able to show themselves. So yeah, just putting your best foot forward whenever you have the chance. And, that's basically what that was all about.
I think whenever you express an opinion on Twitter, it's always a chance for something to blow up and people to have a go at you. So I'm not surprised it blew up that way.
No doubt.
But I completely echo what you say, and as a former player and as a coach myself historically, every day is an opportunity to put something in front of someone, and even if what you put in front of someone one day isn't the best effort, you've then got a chance to take on any criticism that you might receive or any observations that you have, and then a chance to correct it and show people that you are correcting it and moving forward and always trying to progress as an individual. So even if you don't necessarily put your best foot forward, as happened with some position groups, I think with the Senior Bowl, it's a little bit more difficult in that kind of environment, with like a week's worth of practice, for everything to work smoothly and as tight knit as you would need it to work to be able to perform when you're going up against top level talent. And I'm speaking namely about the offensive line positions, which I think the Senior Bowl in the game had their share of struggles against what was an extremely talented, in my view, defensive line and linebacking group as a whole that you had down at the Senior Bowl. So that's something I think that people have got an opportunity always to be able to put their best foot forward. And if that best foot isn't what you think is your best on the day, you got a chance to improve and to show that. Is that something that you notice as a scout, formerly on the road for 18 years, watching teams, maybe what you saw early in the season wasn't what you saw at the end? Progression and growth, I think, is a really important thing to be able to show anyone as a scout. What's your thoughts on that, Jim?
Oh, I think you nailed it. I think you always got to keep an open mind with every play. You owe players the opportunity to get better. So when you're out in the fall at the bigger schools, say for like an Alabama or an LSU or an Ohio State or Michigan, one of those schools, you'll go in August or in two-a-day practice, and then you'll go in early in the season, probably somewhere late September. And you'll follow through, on a third visit, probably in November sometime. And you just got to be careful not to totally make your mind up on a player, those first couple of visits. I mean, because guys do change over the course of a year. I've seen it the last couple of years just with the Senior Bowl. Last year, for example, so the 2019 game, Texas A&M had a change of defensive coordinator. And we watched Texas A&M tape early in the year, and all the senior prospects, I mean, none of them were playing well. We weren't going to invite any of them. And then we went back and circled the wagons later in November once the season was almost over. And, Dalen Mack, the nose tackle, Kiki Kingsley, the other defensive lineman, those guys were playing. They look like different players. So you owe those guys an opportunity to get better. And then you bring it back to the Senior Bowl. I think that's a really important thing, is that, scouts go down there with an open mind. I mean, the first day is usually you give those guys a free pass. I mean, I think scouts understand that they're on the field the first day. They all have butterflies. They're trying to execute a playbook that they've just been given the day before. So really day one is kind of a free pass day. And you're just looking for guys to get better, like you said. You go to last year's game, 2019, with Daniel Jones, the quarterback from Duke. Had a really rough first day. John Gruden, the Raiders head coach, was all over him, and he struggled a little bit, and he came out the second day and threw back-to-back picks early in practice. But he got better each day, and then he peaked in the game and played great. And And that's why Dave Gettleman, their GM, was saying he fell in love with Daniel down here. A lot of it was because of the progress that he showed. He showed mental toughness, and he just worked through the week and got better each day. So yeah, you do. You owe it to these guys. They're going to get better. They're not, it's just like the nature of football, that you get better. You get better, you stay the same. But a lot of guys get better over the course of from junior year to senior year, and then over the course of their senior year. So it's definitely a process.
I'm glad you related it back to the Senior Bowl. I can tell you do this as a living, Jim, in terms of analysis, because you've given me a lovely segue there into looking particularly at the Senior Bowl in your role as director and with the scouts that you've been fortunate enough to petition for and get. Clearly doing an excellent job of bringing talent to the Senior Bowl. So when you're looking at players throughout the season and sort of historically going back onto even things like their huddle tape as high schoolers, are you looking specifically for traits, as in what they do athletically at the position? What is their footwork, hand usage like? Is there development along that process? Or are you looking for production throughout the season, as you mentioned with the Texas A&M guys, that previously, historically, they were struggling under one defensive coordinator, but then excelled with another one, sufficiently to be on your radar? There are sometimes disconnects between coaches and players, and that is going to happen with any human interaction as far as I'm concerned. As a fan of psychology, it's something that's important to me. But when you're looking at players and you're sort of looking in terms of guys that you would really like to have at the Senior Bowl, how do you weigh it in terms of traits and production and also competition level?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's really the totality of all those things, but the physical traits would be the primary thing we're looking for. Because the league is, again, the college football isn't all apples to apples comparisons. I mean, you got all different levels. We had guys all the way down to Division III this year in the game, Division II, FCS. So when you're watching that tape, I mean, that's when you're watching a Division III or Division II player and then an SEC player. That's just two different levels. So you're really looking for the physical traits, size, speed, athleticism. All those things are major factors. And then, because when they get to the NFL level, the coaching is going to be a little bit differently. It's going to be a full-time job. They're going to continue to mature and grow and get bigger and stronger. So it's the totality of all those things. It's instincts, it's production. You always have to factor in scheme and the type of coaching. That's why the longer you're in a certain part of the country, or you get a feel for how guys are being coached, you get a feel for their scheme and what they're being asked to do. So it's one big puzzle piece. But if you had to really boil it down to one thing we're looking for the Senior Bowl, because we're not scheme specific. We're not scouting for one team to throw into one scheme. So we're trying to scout for the entire league. And so really it comes down to physical traits.
That's one of the things I love about the Senior Bowl is that you are, in effect, in a way, a GM who is bringing talent to an organisation at the actual Senior Bowl itself. So you're recruiting almost in a way, similarly the way that a college would. Players that you like at certain positions in terms of based upon what it is that you're seeing and evaluating. And that's what I love about what you've done with the Senior Bowl in terms of the way it seems to have changed for me. I mean, you told us, those who are listening to us for the first time, Jim Nagy told us about Adam Troutman, Ben Barch, Duggar, Chin, a long time ago, before the game was even, close to being taken. So you identified those guys for us previously, historically, well, but people that impressed me at the Senior Bowl this year, there's so many names that I think really elevated their stock and made you look again historically. So one of the things is with so many people to evaluate as a prognosticator, there are literally too many to be able to look at all the tape, which is why teams break it down into regions and they have scouts for each region, as I'm sure you can attest. But people that impressed me, Josh Uche was just an absolute phenom in the game and in practice for me. Denzel Mims, Antonio Gibson Jr., the running back position, who was formerly a wide receiver, Joshua Kelley, Jamarco Hasty, Darius Anderson, Van Jefferson, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Adam Troutman, Ben Barch, Antoine Brooks Jr., Jared Maiden, Van Jefferson, KJ Hill, all of them raised their stock. Was there any particular group that you think, we really nailed that in our evaluation? And is there any particular group where you think we need to look at the way we're going to structure practices and games to try and show them in their best light.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying about those small school guys. I mean, those are really important. Again, the thing with this job is that, and Phil Savage, my predecessor, told me that one thing he said, Jim, your draft is at the end of November. It's not the end of April. So you've got a much abbreviated schedule to try to figure these players out, and you don't have all the information. You don't have combine numbers. You don't know medical stuff. You don't know Wonderlic scores and how they learn. I mean, it's really a tape evaluation. So that's why those small school guys, I mean, we're really trying to bring the best of the best. This isn't about, the Senior Bowl and us trying to look smarter than the next guy, trying to create small school players. I mean, that's why I really felt good about those guys. You mentioned the Chins and the Duggars and the Troutmans and Barch and those guys. When they all came down and showed really well in the game, and most of those guys are going to go probably on day 2 somewhere. So that I appreciate you bringing that up. But in terms of the way we structure practice and everything, we really give the participating teams a lot of autonomy on that, and how they want to structure practice and different drills. Obviously, we'll have the staple drills that we have every year. We're always going to have O-line, D-line one-on-ones and wide receiver DB one-on-ones. A lot of half-line run game drills, things like that, 9-on-7, 7-on-7. So that's all going to stay consistent. But, we allow those coaching staffs to tweak some things. I know that talking to Matt Patricia, the Lions head coach, when he got down to Mobile, Matt and I worked together with the Patriots for a number of years. And he went back, he studied old Senior Bowl tape. He reached out to a bunch of guys that have, a bunch of his contemporaries that have coached in our game before, to see like what worked, what didn't work, in terms of drills, and how how they structured the week and structured practice. And he did a really good job. He did his homework, and I've been to All-Star games over the years. Other All-Star games where you leave the week and you leave the week and everyone's complaining about that they didn't see one thing or didn't see something else. So. We leave it up to them, and they did a great job this year.
Oh, well, I mean, that's fantastic to hear. The coaches now are looking at it as an opportunity to sort of see how they structure and change things. Like I say, there are some things that I would personally love to see. One of the things that I think that is always a struggle when people are watching this online, and fortunately there is some coverage now of practice actually online, which is fantastic for people like me over in England, watching online sort of 5-6 hours ahead of you guys, up at different hours to make sure that we can get access to it. As a former offensive line player at the end of my career and coach, I always find it interesting when you watch the one-on-one pass rush drills, because that's an artificial situation for me in terms of when it comes to isolating for game. One of the things it does show you is someone's ability to change their footwork when I'm evaluating an offensive lineman, their ability to react and to sort of feel which way the defensive lineman wants to set them up and to be able to react. But I do think it's a bit of an artificial when you've got a tackle on the edge. He's always going to be prone to an inside move because you're not going to get any help from a guard because he isn't there. And I would love to see, you talk about the half line drills, I would love to see a 5-on-5. So whether you're running a 3 front or a 4 front, and to alternate those two things is to run the 3 and 4 front with 1 or 2 linebackers behind in terms of the run game, because that's where the defense really has the offensive line then has the upper hand. Is that something that you'd consider suggesting to coaches?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, if you're in football, I mean, it's totally a D lineman's drill. There's no two ways about it.
Pin your ears back.
It's a D lineman's drill. You talk to a lot of you look at all the reps the centers take. I mean, everyone's lining up on the center snap hand, and that's, so there's little things, and you're pinning your ears back and going. So no doubt it's a D lineman's drill. So no, that's a good suggestion. Again, like you said, tackles, you don't have a guard in there to take up space and pinch off a gap, and so that B gap's really susceptible. So no, they've been doing it the same way for a long time, but maybe that's something to consider because it isn't real. It isn't realistic, and what you're looking for from a scouting perspective, like you said, and that's the great thing of being down at field level during practice. You're hearing the different coaching points. You're seeing if these guys can apply that coaching. And then you're just looking for the mental resiliency. If you get your butt whooped on that first snap, you're coming right back up for the second snap, and you want to see which guys can,
react,
hunker down and take a good second rep, and are willing to really get after people. So that's some of the best takeaways of the week are those one-on-ones and just really seeing how the offensive linemen react to it.
And as a Chicago Bears-centric podcast, I want to sort of get your dive on where we are, because for me, we have needs on the offensive line, both at tackle and guard. Wide receiver is a need with Taylor Gabriel going, who was our number 2 receiver. Cornerback, we lost Prince and McNamara in the offseason and released as a cap casualty. We also had Clinton Dix leave at safety, so we need a starting safety. I would prefer to see a box or a cover 2 type or box safety, a nickel, someone who can play in closer to the line of scrimmage to augment what we have in Eddie Jackson. We have a need at edge, tight end and linebacker. How would that conversation go as someone in the draft room as a scout, and you've got a guy that you think at one of those positions of need is going to answer what we need as a team? What would that conversation look like, and who would you suggest that, let's say, O-line and receiver for the Bears in terms of a zone system that we run in terms of run game, and wide receiver we need someone with speed that can get downfield that runs nice routes?
Yeah, I think for where your team's at right now, you got to do something to build around the quarterback. I know bringing in Nick Foles to provide some competition, that's great. I mean, I agree with that move. I think they did the right thing to kind of push Mitch along there. But in an ideal world, Mitch is the guy, right? I mean, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy drafted him, and he's their guy, and they're going to want that to succeed for obvious reasons. And the best way to do that, you got to build the line first. You got to give the young guy time, and then the receiver position, I think, is a position where the Bears have been a little deficient for a number of years now. So the good thing is it's a pretty strong offensive line class, and it's a extremely strong receiver class. I don't think there is an elite one at either position, but I think there's really good depth at both spots. So, now you just talk strategy of the draft, like where do we need to address those? Where do we need to address those spots? Do we need to go wide out in round 1? Probably not. I think in this draft you could get a starter into the 3rd, maybe even 4th round. At minimum, you could get a 3rd receiver in the 4th round. So you can get someone at receiver that's going to get on the field next year and help right away. Kind of like the Redskins did last year out of the Senior Bowl with Terry McLaurin, 76 overall.
Loved him as a player.
Yeah, and that's why Van Jefferson to me is this year's Terry McLaurin.
Exactly.
They were both the fastest guy at the Senior Bowl. We've got a partnership with Zebra Technologies. Terry was last year's fastest guy. Van was this year's. They both are great route runners. They both played on special teams, which speaks to their toughness and competitive makeup. So that's why it's funny to me. If you had a redraft of last year, Terry would be a first-round pick. And Absolutely. It's funny, nobody's talking about Van Jefferson in the first round right now. And Van's going to end up being a better pro than a lot of these receivers that are being talked about in the first round. So you could probably address receiver, 2nd or 3rd round with a guy like Van. And then the first round, I mean, you got plenty of tackle options. And then there's going to be starting interior guys, center guards. Again, I think into early day 3 this year, I think those interior guys teams are going to wait on. I think teams are going to, once that run happens at wide receiver, in offensive line, the tackle group, there's going to be a run on those guys. I think there's going to be a run on running back. So once that starts to happen, I think it's going to push, some of the guard centers down. And so you could pick up a starter there too in early day 3. So a lot of different directions to go. You named off a lot of needs, which isn't a great thing. Great thing. Hopefully, you're going into an off season with maybe 2 or 3 real needs, and it's not that widespread. But the good news is this is a deep draft all the way around. So if the Bears do it right, they should be able to plug in a bunch of guys out of this year's crew.
I think that's the thing with what the Bears have done in the offseason with free agency is that edge has been solidified with Robert Quinn. Tight end has been solidified with having the tight end come over from the Green Bay Packers. Hall of Fame tight end coming over from there. So I think in terms of some player positions are going to be depth positions and some are going to be starters. And I think that's where the Bears potentially, as you mentioned, there are guys that are going to be in the second, third round, which to me suggests that the Bears would be prudent to look at potentially trading back. We have 2 second-round picks this year, the Raiders pick and our own. And it might be prudent with the depth that there is that you've suggested in terms of some of these positions of need to be able to move back potentially and get extra picks where we can get some of those guys that could be immediate contributors into day 2 and early day 3. This off-season clearly has been massively affected by COVID-19 and the epidemic. And obviously it's in the grand scheme of things, it's a smaller thing to look at football in isolation, but it's what we do here on this network, is to look at football. In terms of draft day, do you anticipate there being any issues on the day in terms of, particularly with later round guys, in terms of teams running out of time on the clock with the communication issues they're clearly going to face this year when it comes to draft day?
No, I don't think so. I think the teams are prepared. I don't think there'll be any issues. I think, like anything, the GMs just had to really get a final call on what was going to happen. It was kind of in limbo there for a little bit. I talk to these guys on a daily basis, and trust me, I think there's a sentiment out there, mostly on Twitter, that they think these GMs are whining and complaining. They're not. These guys are competitive dudes. They're all wired the same way. They're not looking for excuses. They just want to know what they're dealing with. And now that they know, they're getting it figured out. So I don't think the draft itself is going to have any issues. I think they'll pull that off without any problems. I think the undrafted free agency component is really dicey. I don't know. I honestly don't know how they're going to pull that off. Kevin Colbert, the Steelers general manager, I guess, sent a proposal into the league office about maybe adding some rounds to the draft, which I think is actually a really good solution for this 1 year when we're in these unique circumstances. I think it calls for something unique, something outside the box. I think that would alleviate a lot of things because it's chaotic. That the undrafted free agency process is absolutely chaotic. You've got you'll have a player getting calls from 20 different teams. You'll have an agent that has 5 to 10 undrafted players, and he's getting calls on each of them, and they've got multiple phones going. And this kid, all these players think they're getting picked. So when they don't, it's kind of a crushing moment for them. And Absolutely. Here they are having to make like a life-changing decision, and they're on the clock, and they've got, all these teams. It's just, it's really chaotic. It's really messy. I don't know if they push that period back and have like a negotiating period to try to, bring a little more, clarity to this thing, and just, I don't know. It's been an issue for years. It's been an issue for years, and it's never really been rectified. It's funny. I posted something on Twitter this week about it, and had a lot of agents reach out to me about stories they've had, and different scouts about stories they've had, things that are happening in free agency, and it's nuts. So that's where I think this draft is really going to be impacted from a process standpoint, and that's the undrafted component.
And I think that's key, especially with the undrafted guys. Very often they attend other teams' pro days, and the teams have local days as well, don't they, in terms of local prospects that might not be on the radar, sort of generally speaking, for them to be able to have an opportunity to have their combine day, in a sense, like a team workout, for example. And those things are all going to be massively affected. So I think you're absolutely right in terms of that's a great solution, Jim. Potentially adding some rounds so teams can have a cleaner process for those guys that are on the verge of being a draft pick, but there are some concerns there medically that we've not been able to test, or we haven't been able to see numbers because they've been previously injured and haven't had an opportunity now to be able to show what they can do in terms of confirming what people have already seen on tape and in person themselves. So I think that's a great solution. With that, thank you very much for answering my questions, but there are some other analysts at the Barroom, are there not, Aldo, who have asked some questions
right.
as well. And I think Aldo has some himself. Do you have time to answer a few of those for us, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely. Fire away.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jim. First of all, our first question comes from Ryan Badgley of the Draft on Tap show. he points out that you do a fantastic job prior to the Senior Bowl, all throughout the college season on your Twitter account at Senior Bowl, of showcasing players who deserve attention from the average fan, from college football fans, and from pro football fans as guys to keep an eye on, because they've got potential to either play in the Senior Bowl or have a professional football career. So Brian asks, during the Senior Bowl week, was there a particular player who you felt perhaps kind of fell through the cracks in terms of getting the attention that player deserved, whether it was through lack of playing time because of circumstances, or just maybe the national media didn't kind of latch on to a player who deserves, to be talked about a little bit more?
Oh, so coming out of our game, they didn't get enough attention based off Senior Bowl week? Is that the question?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah, there was really a handful. So during Senior Bowl week, I honestly don't get a lot of time to really focus what's going on the field that week. I'm walking around the field and talking to different GMs and visiting head coaches. We have 40 college coaches come in this year, so Nick Saban makes his visit every year, and Dabo Sweeney comes every year, but that's become more of a thing. So I'm really preoccupied during the week. So the fun part is, the week after, sitting down with our staff and actually going through the tape is one of my favorite weeks of the year. And there's always some guys that after we watch the tape, we're like, wow, he's better than we thought. And Terry McLaurin a year ago is one of those guys. He's a perfect example of that. But out of this year's game, I think like guys that stand out that I thought that are better than we thought they were even when we invited them. Like Josh Kelley, the running back from UCLA, is starting to get some love now. This late in the process, but I thought he had a really good week. He's better than I thought. Talking to teams leading up to our game, I think he's a 6th round pick for most teams. Now he might go in the 3rd. Jonah Jackson, the guard from Ohio State, I thought had a phenomenal week. You don't hear a lot about guards. Like people don't talk about interior linemen very often, but I thought Jonah was really patient all week, and just was a stud in there and had a great week. You could probably go position group by position group and pick a couple guys out that I thought really stood out that aren't getting a lot of love. Devon Hamilton's another guy from Ohio State. I posted something this week about him, and I think that he's not getting a lot of love as a day 2 guy. He's kind of lost in this D-line class for some reason, but he had an awesome week, and he got better and better. We talked earlier about guys getting better over the course of the year. I started to get calls from buddies up in the Midwest that were going through Ohio State, probably late September, on Hamilton, and most teams were like, yeah, Jimmy might be a 5th or 6th round guy. And, we watched him through the year, and he got better and better and better, and had a great Senior Bowl week. And now, like I said, he could squeeze into the 2nd round. So those are just a few. But there's certainly guys at every spot that, again, we invite them for a reason. We invite them because we think they're draftable players and they're going to be good pros. But even there's a lot of times guys get down here and they're better than we thought they were.
On one of our shows, the 100 Proof Show, there was a debate regarding Chase Claypool, and we're seeing mocks where he goes in the 2nd round, and we're seeing mocks where he goes as low as the 5th round. And one of the hosts made the argument that because of the hybrid position now of wide receiver tight end, that his draft value is closer to the 2nd round, and that his special teams play also increases his value in the draft. Wanted to get your take on what Chase Claypool's value is for this upcoming draft.
Yeah, he's kind of a fascinating guy. I could see where there's a little bit of variance on where people think he's going to go. Like I said, there's not an elite. There's not an elite wideout in this class in terms of like your prototype. There's not the 6'4", 230, low 4'4", Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson. There's just not that guy in this class. But if you're just looking at the measurable stuff, Chase is probably that guy in this year's class. I mean, he's 6'4", he was 238 at the combine. I think he was up 10 pounds from the Senior Bowl, and he ran 4.38 with a 40-plus vertical jump. So he's got all that physical stuff. He's a mismatch guy. I saw him play live against Georgia this fall. made some really nice plays going up above coverage. And you bring in the special teams component. I mean, I really think that's important. I think that it really speaks to a player's makeup, especially at that position where it's prone to have a little more prima donna to it. That's why a guy like Terry McLaurin or Van Jefferson or Chase Claypool, guys that go and run down on our gunners on punt team, and not only just run down there, but they make tackles. Like, they're throwing their bodies around. These guys are football players. So I think that, because there's not that elite guy, height, weight, speed guy at the top, I mean, Chase is going to be really appealing. One, because he has all the physical stuff. I mean, if you hit, you can really hit. He can be a mismatch in the slot, against linebackers, and then he can be a mismatch out on the perimeter against smaller DBs. But then he's going to give you something, as a blocker. He's going to give you something on special teams. To me, I would side more closer to the second than the fifth. I think there's no way he's around even close to the fifth round. I think the sweet spot for Chase will probably be somewhere in the second, maybe early third.
Excellent. My last question is, I was one of 3 people from the Bears Barroom Radio Network down at Mobile, and we had just a fabulous time, our third year down there. And again, we love to shine a spotlight on all the charitable efforts that the Senior Bowl is doing, and we wanted to give you an opportunity here to share with our audience what is going on and perhaps how they can help.
Well, yeah, I appreciate you doing that. Yeah, this is, I see my job I've got 2 responsibilities. I'm a steward to our community here in Mobile and keeping this game strong in our city, and I'm a steward to the NFL. I feel like I work for the 32 teams. I work for those 32 general managers in making sure we have strong rosters and have players down here that they want to see, and guys that are going to get drafted, especially those small school guys, bringing in the right ones. So, locally here we try to do a lot of things, a year-round calendar just to stay relevant, stay in people's minds for our game. But again, we want to give back, and our main focus is to touch every level of football in our community. So, whether that be we have a youth flag league in the fall for the kids whose parents don't want them, playing tackle football yet. We have a Thanksgiving Turkey Bowl event where it's for the youth tackle leagues. We do a middle school combine in the summer. We do this summer we were going to do a 7-on-7 for the public schools. There's a lot of high schools nowadays. I don't care where you're at in the country. There's a lot of public schools that can travel around, and they have the financial resources to, travel outside their area and go to 7-on-7 tournaments and camps and whatnot. And that makes them better for their football season. Well, we've got a lot of, our public school system down here. A lot of these schools can't afford to do that. So that's why we wanted to do the 7-on-7 league this summer. And the unfortunate part for us with the COVID stuff, we're full speed ahead on next year's game, and we've already got almost 400 names on our board for the 2021 Senior Bowl. But we've had to cancel a lot of this stuff. So we're pushing back some dates, but the longer we get in here, we don't know if we're going to get any of this stuff done over the summer for these high school kids, which would be a huge disappointment because we really want to support those guys in their development. So that's the kind of stuff we do in the area. Just there's so many different ways. Football is just the avenue, but it really can affect so many different levels of our community. And again, we're a football entity, right? So we're trying to do it through the game of football.
George, all yours.
Yeah, I have one question. I want to sort of now get you on the spot, Jim, if I may. The Bears are on the clock at 40, and there is Denzel Mims, Van Jefferson, and Chase Claypool on the board, and we've agreed that we want to go receiver. Who are we going?
Yeah, you're putting me on those. All 3 of those are my guys, man. Like that's what makes me different from these other draft analysts. Is that my
which
primary
kid is your
job
favorite, Jim? Which kid is your favorite?
Exactly. This is a different deal for me. Those guys just get to pick. That's why they can do whatever they want with these guys. I mean, these are my guys now, so I don't like picking between my guys.
Are we good with any one of those 3?
Yeah, I'd take anyone. Honestly, I would take any one of them. I think they're all going to be good players. I really believe in all those guys. And again, I believe in all of them that come down here and we invite her. We wouldn't invite them. If I didn't think they were a draftable player, we wouldn't invite them. Things happen between our game and the actual draft, like we talked about, injuries and, medical reports pop up and, some off the field stuff happens. And I mean, there's things that prevent guys from getting drafted. But the reason they got the invite in the first place is because we think they're a draftable player. But I hate to dodge your question, but when it comes to like picking between our guys, that's hard for me to do.
No, that's fine. I was just messing with you, Jim. It's fine. I appreciate it. It's like trying to say which is your favourite child. I mean, that's it's an unfair thing to put on any custodian or parent. As always, bear down. Keep doing what you're doing in the community. We will do whatever we can do as a network to support the Senior Bowl and the kids that are at the Senior Bowl that are getting an opportunity to show what they do. Particularly, with what Badge did with the Badge of Honour. That you were a recipient of. We do that for players as well in terms of trying to recognise where people are trying to make a difference, not only on the field but also equally and possibly more importantly off the field as well, using that as a platform. So in any way that the network can be involved in recognising that at the Senior Bowl, almost like a competition of who is the best prospect in terms of helping their community, let's get that competition going in, sort of trying to, as a species, trying to help each other a little bit more. And if that's through football, let's recognise that and celebrate success. What you're doing is brilliant. I really appreciate your time as well, Jim. You've been fantastic, buddy. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys, and stay safe and enjoy the draft.
Thank you, George Bayliss, a.k.a. Bearlissimo, for a great interview with the executive director of the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy. And I love this. I have never, ever been so prepared for an NFL draft as I have been this year. Not only because of my own studies, but also just being associated with Bearlissimo, Phil Latoshin, Shane Marsaw, Danny Shimon, and the rest of the people here at Bears Barroom. We've just been talking prospects and so forth. I feel like we can go into the Chicago Bears draft room and do a really good job drafting on their behalf. If they happen to need our help, we'd be ready to go. Now, George is going to be ready to go on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central, his regular show, Bearlissimo. He's got a very special guest, and that is Rashad Whitfield, known as the Footwork King. He's worked with Bears players David Montgomery and Roy Robertson Harris on their footwork. He's also worked with some of the elite players already in the NFL and also major draft prospects. Take a listen to this report filed by KHOU TV down in Houston.
Odell Beckham, Le'Veon Bell, Emmanuel Sanders all have ultra-quick feet, and each one has also worked with a Houston man who has a clear plan for making them quicker, better, comes with certain principles. Right, left, forward, and back again. There are no cutting corners for anyone training with Rashad Whitfield, like wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, a projected first-round draft pick, and Courtney Davis, another future NFL wide receiver.
Well, he's going to let you know that he wants to be the number one guy and the only guy talking, and he wants everybody to follow him. And he's showcasing his foot speed and his ability to kind of be like, wow.
Wow is right. All you have to do is look at the video of Rashad Whitfield working with his pupils, and you will be amazed at the kind of work they are getting done together. So that's going to be a really special show. Make sure you tune in at 2 p.m. Central on our Mixlr.com Bears Barroom Radio Network channel. That's Mixlr, MIXLR.com, and just search for Bears Barroom Radio Network. You can join us live. Rashad has promised to be with us for 45 minutes, so we'll have plenty of time to get your questions in and talk great football and get us ready for the upcoming draft. All right, before you go, some very important programming notes here on the Bears Barroom Radio Network. First of all, on Monday night, the premiere of the Fat Mike Chicago Sports Talk Radio Show. That's right, Fat Mike has joined Bears Barroom Radio Network, and he is going to bring it. His producer is Joe Mando, and what kind of a combination do you need better than that? Joe's going to produce the show and also be his co-host, and Fat Mike is going to share his outspoken opinions about Chicago sports, everything from the Bears, the Cubs, the White Sox, the Blackhawks, the Bulls. You have it. You know it. He is going to bring it, and he's also going to bring some very special guests. For instance, on the very first show, it's David Kaplan of ESPN 1000. He will be on with Fat Mike, so that's going to be a lot of fun. As I mentioned before, Bearlissimo is on Tuesday afternoon, and then Shy Fans in the Stands Tuesday night. Joe and the great Greg Braggs will be on hand to give you the latest in sports news and great interviews. On Wednesday, it is the Mike North Advantage. On Wednesday mornings, the Chicago sports radio talk show host icon Mike North shares his outspoken opinions on everything from the coronavirus to the Chicago Bears. Mike will share his thoughts. And then 100 Proof on Wednesday. Draft Dr. Philip Toshin, Shane Marshall, and myself will bring you the oddest, weirdest, most provocative podcast about the Chicago Bears on the planet Earth. This Thursday, make sure you join the Draft on Tap guys, Danny Shimon and Ryan Badgley. They will be talking about all the latest prospects. So we've got quite the lineup of shows for you. We'll have even more than that we'll announce on our Twitter channel at Bears Barroom and our Facebook page, Bears Barroom Radio Network. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed this very special edition of Bearlissimo. Make sure you tell your fellow sports fans about what we are doing here at Bears Barroom Radio Network. We would appreciate it greatly. And if you're listening on iTunes or any place where you can leave a review, please do so. I'm not going to ask you to leave a 5-star review. Be honest. Tell us exactly what you think. And if it's 5 stars, then I really, really, really would appreciate it. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.